The cold wind howled through the dense, foggy forest, its chill biting through the layers of the truck. The tires groaned beneath as the driver, a seasoned trucker, navigated the treacherous road near the Mexican border. He had heard the rumors about this route, disappearances and strange happenings, but he had no choice but to continue. The fog grew thicker as the night wore on, and his headlights barely pierced the mist. The eerie silence seemed to stretch endlessly, making him feel more isolated with every passing mile. The road, winding through jagged mountains, felt unnatural, like it didn't belong in the world. He wasn't a nervous man, but tonight felt different. He thought about the stories he had heard, of women asking for lifts, only to lead the driver into a trap. His heart raced, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Suddenly, in the rearview mirror, he saw her, pale and slender, standing by the side of the road. She raised her hand, signaling for him to stop. Panic surged through him, and he pressed harder on the accelerator, not daring to stop. The fog obscured his view, but he could still make out the truck's silhouette in front of him. He couldn't afford to stop. But then, the truck began to feel off balance. He braked hard and pulled over, realizing his front tires were flat. It wasn't an accident, both of them were shredded. He grabbed a baseball bat for protection, immediately understanding that he had walked right into a trap. He stepped out of the truck and hid in the bushes, waiting. After a few minutes, a car approached and stopped near his truck. 3 men and a woman stepped out. They started searching the cabin for the keys to his truck. One of the men shouted, "You think you can take the keys? You think we can't loot this truck without them?" But then something strange happened. The mood shifted from confident to panicked. "Get in the car!" Quickly, one of the men shouted. They rushed back to the car and sped off, disappearing into the mist. He stayed hidden, watching the empty road around him. A feeling of dread settled in as he realized he wasn't alone. He returned to the truck, climbed inside, and locked the doors, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The minutes passed in silence until he heard something, a faint noise, like footsteps moving toward him. His heart pounded. He quickly ran to the truck and locked the doors, his mind racing. The scratching noise began. Something was scraping at the side of the truck. His mind couldn't comprehend what was happening. In a moment of desperation, he decided to run. He fled into the forest, the sounds of footsteps behind him. His feet pounded the ground as he ran, not stopping until he saw a light in the distance, a building. When he approached, he recognized the car from earlier parked outside. It was the same one that had followed him. Inside, he saw the men, bound and gagged in the center of a pentagram. A dark figure, draped in black, stood over them. He didn't want to know who or what they were. He ran out of the building, into the night, and never looked back. But as he reached his truck, something caught his attention, a woman standing in the mist, her face obscured by a red veil. Her glowing white eyes stared at him, and the feeling of dread deepened. He didn't know who she was or what she wanted, but the terror was overwhelming. As he climbed into his truck, he realized the danger wasn't over. He started the engine, but the truck stalled, refusing to move. He couldn't understand why. It was as though something had stopped him from escaping. Then, he saw the woman once more, standing in front of the truck, her eyes glowing. He tried to drive away, but the truck wouldn't start. The woman in the red veil slowly approached. Desperate, he managed to start the truck again, but it felt like something was pulling him back. The forest seemed to close in on him, trapping him in its grip. When he finally reached the road, he saw another car ahead. But this time, it wasn't empty. The car was filled with strange figures, eyes glowing, faces hidden by dark veils. The trucker froze, unsure of what to do. The figures in the car didn't move. They just watched him, waiting. The trucker drove, trying to distance himself from the ominous figures. The road twisted and turned, but no matter which direction he went, the car stayed with him. He decided to stop and get out, thinking perhaps the driver of the car was lost. But when he approached the vehicle, it was empty. Panicked, he returned to his truck, trying to drive away again. But the figures appeared once more, blocking the road. He was trapped. He reversed, but the car mirrored his every move. He tried everything he could, but the car wouldn't leave. In that moment, he realized the truth. He had stumbled into a nightmare. The road, the figures, the woman, all of it had led him here, to this moment. He wasn't going to make it out. When he finally thought he had escaped, he saw a light in the distance. He followed it, hoping for a way out, but the nightmare continued. The figures were everywhere, watching him, waiting for him. And when he thought he had reached safety, the world went black. He woke up in a hospital, his body shaking, his mind unable to process what had happened. The doctors didn't believe him, saying it was all just stress. But he knew the truth. The figures, the woman, the car, it was all real. And they were still out there. The forest of lost souls had claimed another victim. And he knew he would never be free.